everyone, and welcome to the show. This is episode number 7 of Pop Culturally Deprived, and today we're going to be talking about episodes 6 through 9 of Firefly on your She Named Her Hamster After Me podcast. Sarah and Matthew are here with me again, and spoiler alert, they'll be here next week too as we finish up the series.
Hey, thanks for having us back, Mandy. I'm really excited to be here again.
And Matthew says hi.
I knew you were going to do that.
I wanted to throw out some love trivia for everyone. This episode's being released on Valentine's Day, so I thought that was going to be a great way to kick it off. One of the episodes we're going to talk about is Out of Gas. And in that, Gina Torres, who plays Zoe, was actually written out of most of the episode because at the same time it was being filmed, she had her wedding to Lawrence Fishburne. And we are also going to be discussing the wedding episode today. So we are positively skewered by Cupid's arrow.
I actually had no idea she was married to Lawrence Fishburne. That's really kind of cool.
Who I found out in the week, slight tangent onto a different subject, but Sean Connery was the original plan for Morpheus in the Matrix series. Apparently he turned it down.
I'm
can't see
really
that
happy
at all.
that didn't work out.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, isn't it? I listened to How Did This Get Made, talking about Highlander 2, one of the worst films of all time. And they talked about how come Sean Connery did this film when he turned down The Matrix, he turned down Gandalf, and he turned down Dumbledore.
What?
Yeah, apparently so. Apparently he is famous for turning down these great roles.
I'm really glad he did.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
the better, I think we can all agree.
Yes. Although I would really kind of like to see Sean Connery do Gandalf, but I'm just so attached to Ian McKellen that, yeah.
I have no desire to see Sean Connery do Gandalf or any of those roles, actually. They're all perfect the way they are.
He'd have to keep going in a wizard. Oh, a wizard arrives when he wants. 5 points from Slytherin.
It would be hilarious if he had done it. That's all I'm saying. And I just kind of really want to hear him. I can't do impressions, but I'd really like to hear him say, "Fly, you fools."
Fly, you fools.
I think there you go, Mandy.
Agent
Now you've heard
Smith.
it.
I'm happy now. I'm good. I'm good. Great
Okay.
job, Matthew.
Thank you. I'm going to kick us off with some history on the episodes. Today we are going to be discussing Our Mrs. Reynolds, Janestown, Out of Gas, and Ariel. They originally aired in 2002 on October the 4th, 2 weeks later on the 18th, a week later on the 25th, and then November 15th. The episode Shindig and Safe that we talked about last week aired in between Out of Gas and Ariel. The episode Out of Gas was referenced by Joss Whedon when he appeared at the Tribeca Film Festival. Hulk actor Mark Ruffalo asked him to pick out his 3 favourite projects. He listed Buffy's The Body, issue 5 of the Buffy comics, and Firefly's Out of Gas.
So, real quick, cool little trivia item. According to the DVD commentary, Alan Tudyk, he took the big red recall button from the episode Out of Gas and gave it to Joss Whedon, telling him that if he ever managed to secure a second season of the show, he could press the recall button and it would call all of the cast back. It's a heartwarming story to me.
That is lovely. There's so many
Sad.
stories like that with from Firefly. Apparently all the actors used to hang out on set, just in between shooting, because it was such a nice place to hang out. The episode Out of Gas was directed by Whedonverse alum David Solomon, who was director or executive producer for a number of episodes of Buffy, Dollhouse, connected projects like Once Upon a Time, True Calling, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Tim Minear, who was one of the exec producers for Firefly, he credits David's expert direction for the success of the 3-timeline structure of the episode, which I would agree with. The writer of Janestown was Ben Edlund, who also wrote and directed Angel's Smile Time, as well as a few other late-season episodes of Angel. Ben Edlund is also better known as the creator of The Tick, so we can see some of that comedic element coming into his writing.
That's where I've heard his name before. Okay.
Spoon!
Well, I haven't actually seen The Tick,
Okay.
but it's been in the news a lot over the last year or so because they were talking about doing a reboot on Amazon. So I've just seen it talked about a lot. So the name seemed familiar to me.
It was a staple of my college years whilst playing Tekken on the PlayStation. Joss Whedon wrote Our Mrs. Reynolds, which for me it continues his trend of writing the slightly whimsical or seemingly less significant episodes of his shows that then turns the season into something great. When we look back at Buffy, and he did Lie to Me, and then Hush, and Angel, he did Waiting in the Wings and Spin the Bottle, that brought a lot of elements together and really moved a lot of plots forward, despite seeming slightly monster or situation of the week.
Yeah, Our Mrs. Reynolds was actually the first episode of Firefly that actually felt like a Joss episode to me. And I went back and looked at the first five that we talked about last week to see if he had actually written any of them. And he did write both the pilot, Serenity, and Train Job. But because both of those were essentially pilot episodes, they have a very different feel from the rest of the show. And so to me, they don't really count as full on Joss episodes. And so this one, you could just tell watching it. The direction was different, the writing was better, the dialogue was amazing, and it just felt finally like a cohesive show.
Mm.
And I liked it.
Yeah, he gets his ensemble, and he can write each character very well with their own, wants and needs and likes. Finally, Alan Croker was the one who directed Ariel, and he stands out. Bit of trivia for him: he directed the series finales for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, and Star Trek Enterprise, which technically means he directed the finale of TNG, because that's basically the last episode of Enterprise. Ooh, shots fired.
The interesting thing about that is it's not really surprising because Ariel is an episode that just looks very different from the other episodes that we've
Mm.
seen so far. Ariel, okay, this is going to sound weird because Firefly is a science fiction show. I mean, it takes place on a spaceship, but Ariel seemed more high tech and more science fiction and more like a Star Trek universe than it did in previous episodes,
Well,
if
that
that
was
makes
partially
sense.
because they were on the Alliance planet that had all that high tech stuff instead of
Yes.
off on one of those little side worlds that was poor and back in the Stone Ages.
Like in Our Mrs. Reynolds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But even the bit where they go to the junkyard, it's a 5 minute scene. Maybe it's a 5 minute scene, but they have this whole junkyard set up that's actually really good and really believable. It's so much more different than anything else I think we've seen so far.
I did notice though that I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong, I kind of wanted to go back and watch it, but then I thought I've already seen it twice, so I'm not going to. But I'm pretty sure that the part that Wash picked up and threw that ended up hitting the vehicle that they ended up, reusing, I'm pretty sure that was the same prop that was the catalyzer in Out of Gas.
I think you are right too. It has very much the same shape, doesn't it?
It does. I didn't notice it the first time I watched it, but I went back and rewatched all of these again last night just so I could talk about them more.
Hmm.
And as he was holding it, I was like, that looks really familiar. And then
Yeah.
I kind of looked at the shape and I'm like, I'm pretty sure they just reused that, which, that's great. Save a little bit of money where you can.
Okay, so we're going to discuss the episodes a bit. I think let's continue on from where we were last week, where Mandy, you said you didn't dislike Firefly, but that I don't think it had grabbed you yet. So I'm expecting that to have changed. What are your feelings about the show now that we're two-thirds through?
You are absolutely right. So these four episodes were so much better than the first five. And I am really looking forward to watching more. I was really disappointed I had to stop after Ariel because I really, really want to see what happens next.
Is there anything in the plot or the elements of the world that you've not understood, like it didn't make sense or track against what you knew of it so far?
I'm still having a few issues with River just because she does not match the image I had of her in my head. And I'm trying to reset that because, I mean, she is how she's portrayed to be. That's who she is. And so I'm trying to get rid of my preconceived notions on that. It's just not working yet. But everything else seems about right. I'm enjoying getting to know the characters more. And I was really glad to see that we actually did get some backstory finally in some of these episodes.
Yeah, it's very welcome when you finally get to Out of Gas and you're like, oh, we get to understand where we got to. Okay, that's good. On the Story Wonk Discord chat, our friend Strangely Little gave us her 6 favourite Firefly episodes, and the 4 that we've just watched were made up part of that 6. And another friend, the Kate, said that Out of Gas is her all-time favourite. What do you think makes them so much better than what's come before?
Everything. The writing was better, the stories were better, the character growth was better. And I wasn't super emotionally affected by Out of Gas the first time I watched it. Let me make that caveat there. The first time I watched it, I knew they
Mm.
weren't going to die just because, I mean, we're only on episode, what, 8 out of 14 at this point. So Mal's
Yeah.
not going to die. So I was just kind of watching it from a more clinical perspective, trying to figure out what was going on, why this was all happening. And so it didn't affect me emotionally. When I watched it the second time, it was a little more emotional because I was actually understanding the relationships a little better and I was understanding, how the backstory related to what's going on now and how the characters have grown and all of that sort of stuff. And so I actually ended up thinking it was a really beautiful episode. Our Mrs. Reynolds was the first episode where the crew finally actually felt like a crew. They were all together. They were working together. That found family. And I was thinking about it and I realized it's because the last episode we watched was Safe and it ended with that shot around the dining room table.
Mm.
Not a dining room, but the table where they were all
Yeah.
eating. And that's where I first mentioned the idea of found family. And so now our Mrs. Reynolds is picking up right after that, and that idea has carried through. And I really liked it. And the dialogue was just so much better and worked for the characters. And all of my examples here are all from our Mrs. Reynolds, but they're all things that stuck out. Book telling Mal that he's going to go to a special kind of hell if he takes advantage of Saffron. Mal saying, "Preacher, you've got a smutty mind," made me giggle so much. Zoe asking Wash, "Remember that sex we were going to have ever again?" And then my personal favorite line from the entire episode, "I'm sorry, are you touchy because I got myself a bride or because I don't plan to keep her?" I mean, those are all fantastic, and you don't get any lines like that in the previous episodes. I
No.
think the previous episodes, Joss wrote, Serenity and Train Job, were both, they took themselves a little too seriously, I think, because they were trying to set up the world.
Mm.
And so we didn't see a lot of that. But now that we're living in the world and we're seeing the characters interact with each other, we actually get a sense of who they are. And it made me fall in love with it just a little bit, I have to say.
Okay, so real quick, going back to Out of Gas, you said that you were looking at it kind of from a more clinical point of view because you knew that Mal wasn't going to die and the crew wasn't going to die. But unlike you, Out of Gas was actually really emotional for me, even from the very first time I saw it. And it wasn't because I thought they were going to die. It was more because we got to see a glimpse into how much Serenity actually means to Mal.
Mm.
And when I say Serenity, that extends to the crew as well. But like from the moment he set eye on her while the salesman is trying to talk up this other ship to what was almost the end of the story when he was ready to go down with his ship, it just showed a deep love for that ship that seemed deeper than anything else I'd expected from him before.
Yeah, I agree. I really like how Mal internalized. So in the beginning of the episode, when Mal is, laying on the floor and dying, and you get that voiceover from the salesman telling him how great the ship is, you assume at that point that he's talking about the Firefly ship, the
Yeah.
Serenity. And Mal has internalized that to be about his ship because he loves it so much. And I just love that. I think it's great.
It's a really beautiful moment.
It is, and having rewatched it last night, I think I can appreciate the episode so much more than I did the first time. All four of these were just really great, and I'm finally getting on board this love for Firefly thing. I am, and I'm really, really excited to watch the rest of the series, but I'm also sad because I know that it's going to end, and I'm watching this show just thinking, how could they have canceled this? Because it's so good.
The bit with the ships, it's very much lifted almost wholesale from the sort of Han Solo Millennium Falcon relationship. It's a hunk of junk and all this, but it's amazingly loves it for all its flaws.
Yeah, I
Um,
could see that.
the canon at that time was that he'd won it from Lando because Lando put up any of his ships when he was a ship seller, expecting that Han would go for the flashy one, not the one in the back he was modifying for himself. So it's very much the same sort of story.
Well, Mal is very much a Han Solo
Yeah,
kind of archetype too, so
yeah, they dress largely the same as well.
they do. Absolutely.
My theory for why these are so much better episodes is that Shepard's book is used significantly better. We talked last week about how he is the exposition machine
Hmm.
device. That's basically what he does. He even calls out that he's fairly useless. But in this, he gets involved in the stories a bit more. We have him at least coming in and doing the Shepherd thing, commenting on Saffron, looking after River, getting her, that understanding of what faith and symbols are. And I think just using him much better opens up the world a bit more for them. It brings them a character that's a bit more of the heart than we've had with just Kaylee being happy and bouncy.
I can agree with that. I don't recall a single time watching these four episodes where I thought that we were just getting an exposition dump. So these four episodes were much more showing instead of telling. And I think that just makes for a better story overall, regardless of who the characters are. But I think you've nailed it on the head with specifically with Book because he was our exposition dump before, and it just made it better.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we talked about previously during this week is that whether there is particularly story to these episodes, and that might explain why there's not so much exposition. Because with the exception of the heist, there's no real, objective for what they're doing. It's, oh, a woman's come on board, and let's deal with that. Oh, and look, we're going to get caught in a net. Or
Yeah,
they're
well,
carrying out the moving the cargo on Janestown, but that's not really the story, and that happens largely off screen anyway.
Well, because Firefly is not about the crimes that they commit. Firefly is about the crew's life as they're on the ship and as they're going about their days, I think. And the heist and dealing with Saffron and all of that stuff, and even going to Janestown to do whatever crime they were going to do there. I can't even remember. They were picking up some kind of merchandise. Those are all just plot devices to tell us more about the characters, I think.
Hmm.
And so it can be easy to forget that or even to gloss right over that, I think, and decide that Firefly is not about anything. But it's really about these people that we're watching.
Yeah,
And for me, that makes it even better. I think that's one of the reasons I liked these episodes so much more because I connected to the characters. In the first five episodes, I'll say the first four episodes because I really did like Safe, but the first four episodes I could not have cared any less about any of those characters because I didn't know who they were and I didn't understand what their motivations were. I didn't really understand their relationships to each other. And once we got to our Mrs. Reynolds, that just completely changed.
yeah. So, almost taking from that, is it possible you could sit someone down and start with our Mrs. Reynolds, skip the first 4 or 5 episodes, and just get into the character bits? Do you need any of the exposition or the background history that you get from those first few?
I don't think we could skip all five. I do think we need Serenity because Serenity introduces us to everybody, gives us a little bit of the history of the universe with the war at the beginning, and also explains River and Simon. And I think explaining River and Simon is super important because understanding that why they're fugitives and why she's crazy is super important to every episode. And so I feel like we definitely need Serenity. I don't think we need two through four. I do want to keep Safe in there because Safe is the episode where there was a turning point where we go from these people being independent to coming together as a group. And I think that's fundamental to moving forward.
And then I just want to touch on one of the things that we mentioned last week. We talked about Joss Whedon. His writing often has subtle touches, setting up not even future episodes, but future seasons and whole ideas he's going to bring into play. Out of Gas gives us delivery on one of those elements with the compression coil, Chekhov's compression coil. It finally goes kaput. Is that too subtle, or is it continuity that you quite like?
I'm gonna go with too subtle, and I think the reason that I'm struggling with this as, the slow burn plot point, because in Out of Gas, it wasn't the compression coil that broke, it was the catalyzer.
Which I think is part of, because when they get rescued, the guy says, "Oh, it's not even your whole thing; it's just that bit."
Right,
Mm.
right. So I don't know. I guess my perspective on the ship is that it's a bunch of broken down parts anyway that have been salvaged and, duct taped together as best as possible. And so I don't know.
I really like that super subtlety aspect to it because they don't make a big a big thing of the parts going bad in the previous episodes, but it is in there, and it's a really nice setup for when the tragedy happens, when the big event happens. But it's not something that's really called attention to. So you're not going to catch it the first time you watch it. You might not even catch it the second time you watch it. But when you go back and watch it again and again, you start to be like, oh, that's setting up for something coming up. To me, it's awesome to be able to watch a show over and over again and always catch something new. And I think that's what I like about Joss's subtlety.
And maybe that's why I don't have much of a thought on this particular instance because I haven't rewatched episodes 1 through 5 yet because I didn't really like them. So probably once I get done with the whole thing, I'll go back and do it. But I mean, like I said, I've already rewatched these 4 episodes, but I didn't go back to the first 5, and so I'm just not remembering some of those finer details that Joss is famous for putting into his writing.
Yeah, and I think we've had a few more, some that we might touch on a little bit later, but some that will never come to anything. So it's quite lovely that there's all these little touches you go through, but also a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Mandy, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the episodes?
Yes, we didn't do this last week because I wasn't a big fan of the individual episodes, but I loved all 4 of these so much that I'd really like to go through and just kind of talk about the pros and cons and the things that we liked and the things that we didn't in each of these episodes by episode before we kind of go into some deeper thematics. And so, starting with Our Mrs. Reynolds, the main thing I really want to talk about is how the crew treated Saffron because it just kind of was all over the place depending on the character. I really, really, really loved how Mal treated her. I know in the beginning he was surprised and so he was a little mean, but it wasn't out of malice. It was because he was surprised and confused and didn't really know what was going on. He was respectful of her. He never tried to take advantage of her. And then he really wanted to make sure that she stood up for herself. She was a very shy, demure woman, and he was trying to help her learn that she has value in her own right. And that just made me so happy. I was super disappointed in how Zoe treated her because I tend to view Zoe as the one who has the most class out of the crew. And I don't know if that's just bias on my part because she's the only woman. Well, okay, that's actually not true because Kaylee's there too. But Kaylee is so young to me. And so Zoe has this maturity that Kaylee doesn't have. And so when Zoe came in and saw Saffron there, her first thought was, let's bring everybody in here and humiliate this girl in order to tease Mal. I mean, her end game was not really malicious towards Saffron, it was more malicious towards Mal. But she brought everybody in essentially to point and laugh at her. And I was so, so very disappointed in that.
So I kind of disagree with Zoe being the mature, classy woman that you kind of talked her up to be. You have to kind of, I mean, yes, she's more mature and classy than some of the other characters, but you have to remember she and Mal are like, she's like Mal's right hand person. Like she's always there with him. She
Mm.
puts up with him. She goes punch for punch with him. She's not as mature and classy as she seems. And when she sees an opportunity to throw a punch or a joke or anything, she's going to take it and then think about the outcome later, I think. And that's something that she has very in common with Mal.
Maybe. I feel like I haven't seen apart from this, I feel like I haven't seen much of that side from her. I've seen her be respectful and I've seen her be a rule follower and so I would have expected her to want to protect this girl instead of using her as the butt of a joke. And so it disappointed me, that's all.
I think there's a couple of things that I read into it. I think obviously I'll have a slightly different perspective on this. I kind of take it that, and like you say, she's the strong Amazonian warrior type, go and do action and things, and she just cannot comprehend Saffron's viewpoint, being subservient, doing everything for Mal. Where she and Wash are arguing, and she's like, she's out of her mind. She just cannot empathize with her or put herself in that place. But at the same time, she doesn't trust Saffron. So I wonder if there's a bit that, we're supposed to take. Oh, Zoe's, clever enough. She knew what was coming. She and Anna both figured it out. Yay, go girls.
Well, I did. I did note in my thoughts doc that I thought Zoe was jealous because she did come across that way just a little bit,
Mhm.
and I don't mean jealous in a romantic sense.
Well, she she
Nah,
get- she does the thing of, the man rushes in to defend her, and Wash is not defending her. He's like, she's a really, simple girl. She's sheltered life and all that. And then
yeah.
then at the end, where he's just knocked out, she has a thing of, not my man. He got hit over the head.
I do love Zoe and Wash together, I have to say.
Is Wash no longer just the quippy guy for you?
No, he's not, because he got more to do in all of these episodes. I mean, starting with this one, I mean, he had a whole scene with just him and Saffron, and we didn't see anything like that in the previous 5 episodes. And I feel like he played a much more instrumental role in each of the stories of all 4 of these episodes. So I really liked him a lot more.
That's really interesting because I can't think that he's particularly done much other than be the pilot and be a bit quippy.
He made the ambulance helicopter
Hmm,
in
true.
Our Mrs. Reynolds, and he walked Mal and Zoe through the directions to go rescue everybody. So I mean, if he hadn't been there, then they would have failed. They wouldn't have
True.
been
He,
able to
he
do
was
anything that they
involved.
did in our Mrs. Reynolds. In
Yeah.
Out of Gas, he made the button. I mean, the button didn't get to be used, but he was thoughtful enough to make the button and to, you know, he expanded the beacon, the signal, so that a ship could find them and did find them. So if he hadn't done that, they would have all died.
Well, to be
Uh,
fair, he wasn't going to do that.
I
no,
know.
He thought
I
it was
love that
useless.
scene. It's so wonderful. Just well, it would do this. Oh, I should probably go and do that.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, he was worried about his wife, who was unconscious.
Yeah.
I don't blame him for that, and he had to fight with Mal because Mal was trying to tell him, you need to go do your job to help save everybody instead of sitting by your wife's side. I mean, I see both of their perspectives, but that's a lot more character from Wash than we saw in any of the episodes from last week. So, I like him more.
I wanted to throw something out there to watch out for in the last few episodes. Just as an aside, it doesn't actually mean anything. There was a Nerdist podcast recently came out with Nathan Fillion, and they talk about being in MCU films and Disney films and so on. And he said, I'd love to go and be a voice for a character or something. I really enjoy doing that. But Alan Tudyk always gets there first. And he gave this story about how anytime you ask Wash to do something, you're like, Wash, fly us over there. He goes, flick 3 switches and push forward. Or if you go communicate with that person, flick 3 switches and press another button. And it's always those 3 switches. So I think in the last few episodes, you should watch out for Wash going, I have to do something. I'm going to flick these 3 switches.
I will definitely look out for
Yeah,
that.
good fun.
That's
And
funny. I've never noticed that, but now I'm going to look out for it as well.
yeah, it's the 3 overhead. Apparently they hadn't built them in when they rebuilt it for the movie. So Nathan Fillion got them to add it back in for Alan Tudyk. And I
That's funny.
didn't notice this. It is making me want to re-see it again. But apparently in Rogue One, his character has 3 switches overhead that he flicks at one point.
That's
Oh, that's
fantastic.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. I really hope that's true.
Now I have
I
to go
will be
see that
looking out
movie
for
again.
that.
At the beginning of Our Mrs. Reynolds,
Wait, 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 wait. We have one character we haven't talked about with the way that he treated Saffron, and I have to talk about this.
I know, but the next question is about Wash, so I thought while we're in the conversation about Wash,
Oh, okay. Go,
but you
go
can you
forth.
can go with your character assassination.
I mean, we all know how I feel about Jane at this point, and that hasn't changed. It's only gotten worse, let me tell you.
Yay,
And
Jane,
in,
he's
in,
huggable and cute and funny and stuff.
in this episode, he he wants Saffron, which is not a bad thing all in its own. I mean, he's a man, he's lonely, she's a single woman.
She's
Mal
Christina
clearly
Hendricks.
doesn't. Yes, she is Christina Hendricks. Mal obviously doesn't intend to actually keep her as his wife. So I think it's perfectly reasonable for Jane to want to pursue her. That's fine. But what Jane does is he brings his very favorite gun and presents it to Mal to trade for Saffron. And even says, well, it's not a trade, it's damn thievery because the gun is worth way more than what you got. What you got. Let me repeat
Yep.
that one more time. What you got. Talking about a woman. Oh my God. I can't. I can't. Like, at that moment, if I could have reached through the TV and, like, throttled someone, yeah, it would have happened.
I think
Because
that was more him expressing his affection for his gun than speaking down about the woman. I think that, any woman would have easily been placed in that role, and Jane still would have shown more affection for the gun because he's Jane. He's that big, stupid, brawny guy that punches first and asks questions later. But in this case, he was seeing that Mal had something that he didn't want, and there was an opportunity for him to possibly get it. But he was going to have to make, in this case, a big sacrifice of his own if he had any chance of getting it. And yeah, it was really screwed up. It wasn't, uh, it did not endear me to the guy at all. But I think it just really was more about the emotion that he has for his firearms than it was for him speaking down about the woman.
I can't. I just, yeah. I'm so done with Jane at this point. And of course, I mean, it only gets worse from here, but yeah. Okay. I'm done for now. I'm done for now.
No, it's an absolutely valid point. It's horrendous to compare a person to a thing. At least it wasn't made now, because now he'd have attacked her or tried to take her or rape her or something, because that's what they use for shock value in TV. Um,
That is
so
absolutely true.
you said he's the big stupid guy who punches first. At least he doesn't go with aggression. He's clearly spent time in his bunk thinking about it over and over again and decided this is the way he can get her.
It's right. So, I mean, at least he asked, but no,
Mm.
no.
We'll get more into Jane when we get to Janestown, I think, and have a bit more of a conversation on him then. At the beginning of Our Mrs. Reynolds, when they find Saffron, Saffron's hiding at the beginning, but no one ever comments on that point. Fine. Mal asks Zoe to go and get Wash for him, and she, like you say, decides to embarrass him by getting absolutely every member of the crew into the cargo hold. Why does Mal want Wash to come down? Why Wash?
I watched the episode twice and it didn't stand out to me, so I have no idea.
I This is just a theory. I might have to watch the episode again because I don't specifically recall that as either, and I've seen the episode 5 or 6 times. But I think it was more of him wanting Wash to come down quickly before everybody else so that he could discuss turning the hell around and dropping the woman back off or taking her to the nearest possible planet or something before it turned into a big explosion of awkwardness on the ship.
Yeah, I think from a narrative standpoint, it's there. Like it's exactly that thing. Like he wants to keep it quiet, and then she doesn't keep it quiet, so it's all fun and we're laughing at him. But he can use the comm system to ask him to turn around, and for Wash to say no, we can't because you asked me to avoid everyone. It just he and
Yeah,
Wash have never seemed to have that relationship where he's like, "Hey, Wash, what do I do with this woman?"
but if he used the system, then everyone would probably be able to hear, or he would not have any idea like who was on the bridge with him. I mean, somebody could have overheard that he didn't want to hear. Of course, in the end, everybody heard anyway. But
Yeah, it's one of the things that throws me out. But that's just me, clearly. We
Yeah, well,
haven't.
yeah, because I didn't even notice it,
Yeah, yeah.
honestly.
We haven't mentioned Saffron herself really. Christina Hendricks. I love Christina Hendricks. Did either of you watch Mad Men?
I've
Not
watched a
yet.
few episodes, but I haven't been able to get into it.
Okay. Um,
I mean, I'm
I
familiar with Christina Hendricks just
hmm.
because, I mean, she's relatively well known for a lot of things. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see her. I've heard Alistair talk about her being in Firefly, and I completely forgot about it because it just seems so weird and out of place. And I completely forgot about it until this episode, and I was like, she looks really familiar. Oh my gosh, that's Christina Hendricks.
Yeah, and this is very much the two sides of Joan, her character in Mad Men as well. The sort of going up an octave, talking very nicely and girly, oh, let me get you a drink, let me fix some food, being very nice around the office. But then when it comes down to actual business and doing things, talking in a very even manner and being in control of things. So there's something of an audition for the character in here.
I'll
And
have to take your word for it.
I'd recommend Mad Men to everyone. I love it to bits. When they aired the finale a year or two ago, I watched the whole thing through again as soon as that one had finished. It's fabulous.
Okay.
I mentioned everyone being DC voice actors. Christina Hendricks is Lois Lane in the All-Star Superman series. So we have another one coming onto that list. And I particularly love the bit where she talks about her sistren.
I liked that too, and you calling attention to it made me want to ask, do you watch Orphan Black?
I do watch Orphan Black. It's a little bit from that. Sistren is a very, very rarely used word. There are 4 words in the English language which, when you put them as a plural, they end in en, and sistren is one of them. And no one uses it. You always use sisters.
Right,
In the
right.
same way, you very occasionally use brethren, but usually you'd use your brothers. And there's a few specific men in the world who would talk about oxen as a plural of
True.
ox.
Right.
Everyone uses the word children, though. And that's the only one that gets used in sort of common parlance. But to use sistren is a completely rare word. Fabulous. I love it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually heard that before.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it, and my ears perked up just because of the similarity to Orphan Black. Now, in Orphan Black, she doesn't actually say sister, and she calls them sestras.
Hello, sister.
But it's it's a very similar, and so my ears perked up, and I like it a lot.
You're all sheeple. Bah.
Oh, now I have to decide if I'm
Sarah,
going to leave that in or not.
Sarah, do you watch Orphan Black?
I watched the first two seasons and
Okay.
I lost interest in it.
I
So
can
sad.
understand that. It gets
I
weird and
can, but it
convoluted.
still makes me sad. But it's still
No,
so
it
good.
got to the point where the lead character, I don't even remember her name because it's been so long, but when the lead character's kid got kidnapped, I was kind of like, "Eh, I'm kind of over this. Like they keep introducing more clones that look exactly like her, and she's a really spectacular actress, and in the way that she's able to play all these different personalities, but it just I don't know, it just kind of got old to me. Like it was the same thing over and over again, all these
Mm,
different clones popping up here and there, and I don't know, I just lost interest.
fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You like
The,
what you like.
the quality of the acting in that was the thing that got me through to when it picks up a little bit later on. In the same way, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, it was the songs that got me through the sort of poor bits of the first season. Anyway, were there anything more we want to talk about on our Mrs. Reynolds? He asked knowingly.
I am really surprised that some of the dialogue between Saffron and Mao got past standards and practices in 2002. I mean, it was enough to kind of make me blush a little bit, and I was just a little surprised.
Especially
No?
for American TV, because you will cut out the racier elements of everything.
Right. I mean, and this is regular broadcast television. It's not
Mm.
on cable. And so I was actually really shocked, both when she quoted the Bible verse, which I'm 99.9% sure it was from a fictional Bible and not the real one.
I haven't
But I
checked
could
that
be
way.
wrong. I didn't look it up, but it was very,
And now I
very
have to look it up.
racy. I mean, that was very, very racy. And then, of course, the I swell to think of you and me, and I see that you do too. That's just kind of,
That's very
that,
very hot.
yeah. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm really surprised it got past it, and I wonder if it's just because it is more in the metaphor range, although that last piece is slightly less metaphorical, and maybe that's why it was okay. But I was just surprised.
I think it's one of those things that it would have gone over the heads of the younger viewers, but the older viewers would have known exactly what it was they were saying, and it wasn't like explicitly said, it was the metaphorical sense. So I think it probably slid through the censors just because of that. If it had been any more specific, I think it would have been cut out. But I think that the fact that the way she wrote it, the way she said it, would have just flown right over the heads of the younger viewers. I think that's what made it okay.
Probably.
Yeah,
Just it stuck out to me, that's all.
yeah, I'd agree with that point.
So, how does Saffron's lipstick work? Every time this sort of thing comes up in any TV show, I always wonder, um, how does it affect the person you kiss and not affect you? I always wondered this in Doctor Who too, when River had the lipstick that made the guards go to sleep when she kissed them. So how can you wear a product on your own lips that doesn't affect you when it affects the people that your lips touch?
So, this is something that has bothered me actually kind of a lot throughout the years. And I have thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And the only theory I have that makes sense to me is maybe she used something like Vaseline to put a seal between her lips and the lipstick before she put the lipstick on. Even then, I think it's really far fetched because, maybe she licks her lips or maybe a little bit kind of gets off, like runs off the, out of the lip line and onto her skin or something. Like, it's really far fetched to me, but that is the only thing I can think of that would keep the lipstick from affecting her while it's affecting somebody else.
It puts me in mind of The Princess Bride, with Vizzini and the Man in Black showing down and poisoning a cup with iocane powder. And it turns out, spoilers for The Princess Bride, skip forward 30 seconds if you haven't seen it, that the Man in Black actually has a tolerance for iocane powder and immunity, and he's poisoned both cups. And I wonder if that's whatever affects them, she actually can't be affected by it. It only
I
affects
thought
men.
that as
It's a
well.
chromosome-specific poison.
No, because it
But
affected
it
in.
affects Inara.
True. Whoa, oh, now we're getting some, fan fiction about Anara.
Yeah, although thinking about this, my one of my thoughts was that it was really far-fetched because she would have had to have had it on the entire time. Because for some reason, I had been thinking that we had stayed with her the entire time. But as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing that we weren't with her. She was waiting for Mal in his room. And so now I have a whole new perspective on I've made myself ready for you because that means she put this stuff on her lips and made herself ready to knock him
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that more now that
Gi-
it has more than one meaning.
yeah. Given it seems to act pretty quickly, why does she have to go through the seduction elements with Mal and with Wash and with Anara? Why doesn't she just kiss them? Is there a mystical law they have to want it to be affected by it?
No, I think she was trying to. I would think that she was trying to commit to the job and
Yeah.
not draw more attention to herself. It would make more sense that this woman would try to seduce someone than to use brute force against them
Hmm.
until she had to.
Yeah, I think part of it was her just trying to keep quiet and not call the rest of the crew's attention to what she's doing. So if she quietly seduces Mal and knocks him out, the rest of the crew is clueless. They don't know anything's going on. But if she tries to use the brute force or force herself on him, he might make noise and then the rest of the crew would come running in. So I think that is part of why she was doing it in the way she was.
Yeah, because she was trying to do it in such a way that she could still get away. And
Yeah.
I think with the brute force, it would have lessened her chances of being able to do that.
Hmm. What is her actual plan? What is she actually doing? Yeah.
I am still unclear. I mean, obviously, she was helping the two guys with the net, but I don't understand why because she doesn't end up back with those two guys, and so I can only assume that she was paid to do this, but it doesn't really make sense. If I feel like if you start picking at that thread, it's all going to unravel, and so I try not to think about it.
You're whistling past the plot holes.
Well, maybe they paid her for the job that she did and she collected her money and then she was like, "Peace out. I'm going to go on to my next job."
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there are questions about how she knew to be where she was and that all of this was going to happen and then that their route was going to take them right by the thing that actually took pictures of the spaceship and there's just a lot there that you really kind of have to whistle past, I think.
Yeah. I'd agree.
But I'm really good at doing that. So I do wish that Mal hadn't hit her at the end.
No, no. I'm enormously glad that he did.
Yeah.
Not because I think anybody deserves to be hit. They don't. But in Mal's world, that is the way that he takes care of things. He punches people if they piss him off. And if he had not hit her, if he had treated her like the damsel in distress that she was trying to portray, that would have made me feel less about Mal because it there's this big air of equality on this show that I love, that the women are strong and powerful, but he would have been treating her just as the delicate flower. But with him hitting her like he did at the end, it showed that he was treating her as an equal.
Hmm.
And that is, even though I don't like physical violence, that is something I can respect from Mal.
I think the reason I don't like it though is because there was no need for it at that point. I mean, okay, she was relatively powerless at that point. She'd gotten away, she was in her house. He had her pinned down. She was
Oh,
no
she's
threat to
she's still
him, and
using her powers on him.
I know she was still trying to seduce him, but I mean, to what end? What was going to happen at that point? She was really just trying to, get him off of her
Yeah.
mostly,
Take the gun,
and
shoot him
she
in the
was
head.
bragging about herself. So, what reason did he really have to knock her out and leave? Was he not going to be able to get away from her to get off the planet? I mean,
Well, you never know. She is a manipulative little B word, and you never know what she might have done if he had stood up and let her go.
Yeah, if all it takes is a kiss to knock him out.
that's true. I mean, she could have been wearing that lipstick again, so.
Or have something, even worse hidden away or stashed somewhere. And he does say to her fairly early on, if someone ever tries to kill you, you try to kill them right back.
Yes.
She has hurt him and his. He goes and wreaks vengeance.
I think it was just shocking to see because it's not something you see on television very often
Hmm.
where a man, particularly the man who is the so-called hero of the show, uses violence against a woman.
Yeah, I think.
Unless it's right in the heat of the moment in an actual fist fight. I mean, this was not a fist fight. It was one blow to her head and she was knocked out.
Hmm.
And so I think that's more of my perspective. It was shocking and it's not something I'm accustomed to seeing, and I didn't expect to see it here.
Well, again, if that had been a man underneath him, he would have done the exact same thing. So I was really happy that he did that.
And again, we've got some more fanfic with that image.
Right?
I,
Absolutely.
I'm reminded of Deadpool, where he's attacked by the two Asian women. And he's like, is it sexist to hit you? Is it sexist to not hit you? I'm so confused.
Right? Yeah. And the last thing that I wanted to bring up was at the end when Mal went to confront Inara, because I really, really thought I was so prepared for this that he was going to call her out on kissing him. And then they subverted it at the last minute, and he thought that she kissed Saffron too. And I was just so disappointed. I wanted them to finally talk about it. And I know that doesn't make sense because that's never going to happen, 6 episodes into a show, but I just wanted it to.
I thought it was hilarious the way it happened, and I think it would have been disappointing for a lot of people if they had gone ahead and taken that jump and explored that relationship so openly that soon into the series. I thought it was perfectly done.
Oh, I mean, I don't disagree with that. And I fully understand why they wouldn't do it so early in the series, but I am a bleeding heart romantic and I see that relationship and I see them dancing around it and I just want it to happen already.
If ever there's a point where Inara is going to go, no, no, I kissed you because I love you, you fool. That was it. And
Yes.
I can see the frustration that she doesn't.
I think at that
She was
point,
ready.
I,
She was so ready.
at that point, like she was about to be like, yes, it was me. And then he starts making fun of her and he's like, oh, man, fuck this guy. This is sorry if you have to beep that, but she's just like, oh, that's right. You're an asshole.
Yeah, yeah. There are definite things there that we haven't yet seen about why she hasn't told him. Now, there's one thing that stands out in the episode that River doesn't actually have any words. She doesn't have any lines of dialogue whatsoever. and the one scene she was written was actually cut from the final episode, which is where she wants the shepherd to marry her and Simon because she's all jealous of Saffron. They talk her out of it. She calls Saffron a thief, which Saffron laughs off. Oh, wasn't this silly girl? Ha 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 ha. And then she shoves a cushion up her jumper and says, "Look, I'm in the family way," which is
Such a
such a fun
weird
little scene.
It's such a weird scene. I had never even seen it until you guys were talking about it in preparation for this podcast. And so I went and watched it. And a part of me is really glad that they cut that scene because it's just so weird. It's so out of nowhere almost. The foreshadowing that was lost from River calling Saffron a thief, I'm kind of sad that that wasn't in there. But I don't know. It was just weird to me.
Yeah, I think I understand why it was cut, and I'm actually glad it was because this scene also had Mal talking to Saffron about standing up for herself, and I think he did it better in the scene that was left in,
Yeah,
and it doesn't make sense to have both of them. And so that's probably one of the reasons why this was cut was because that scene was just so much better previously. But I watched this scene just I like my jaw was dropped while I was watching this scene because I haven't seen River be this crazy yet, and I just didn't really understand it. But that last line was so funny. I started giggling so hard and I couldn't stop. And Summer Glau just does this deadpan thing so well.
She is
So
amazing.
well. Like her face, her tone, the way she says the words. And and it's like she's trying to make a joke, but she's so serious when she does it. It was the same way in an Out of Gas when it's Simon's birthday and she starts going on and on and on about how it's not applicable because days
yeah,
are whatever, and then she looks at him and she goes, "I didn't get you anything." It's that same kind of humor, and I love it. But at the same time, I'm really glad the scene wasn't in the episode.
yeah. Like you say, an episode where we've got possibly pushing the boundaries of what could be proper on TV, to also have a debate on incest and what's appropriate there might have pushed them a bit too far.
Yeah. I think it's a scene that could be in an episode, but it would need a lot more exposition. I think we would need to understand more of where River was coming from other than just two people together are better than one and we love each other. Like I would want to know a little bit more about where her mind is because obviously she knows they're brother and sister. So
Yeah,
it's weird to me. But
I
it was
remember when I
super
was
funny.
I remember when I was really little, I wanted to marry my grandpa because I loved him and I thought that's what people did when they loved each other. So I think
oh,
that's kind of the show reminding us how young and innocent and everything that River is,
hmm.
and partially because of the brain damage that she's experienced, and partially because she's still a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
And I commented last week. There's moments, particularly in Safe, where there's more of a sort of couple sense of this rather than a brother and sister, and perhaps this just follows on from that a little bit as well.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Next up is Janestown. And frankly, I don't have much to say about it because it's all about Jane and I hate Jane.
This is an awesome episode in my opinion. It's my second favorite of the series. And it's because they're setting up Jane is terrified to go to this place because he knows he's pissed somebody off there. And everybody is like, oh, shut up, we're just gonna do the job and leave. But then they get there and it's so unexpected that Jane is the hero of this town, and even
Yeah.
he doesn't know that he's a hero. He doesn't even understand why. And it's so funny because Jane's always the bad guy. He's always such a little shithead, and these people almost worship him. And it's just the comedy in there of like when they're standing and staring at the statue, and he's like, "Come on, let's go, guys," and they're just like staring at it because it's unbelievable. It's perfect. Jane is one of my favorite characters, even though you hate him so much, Mandy. I think he's hilarious. And this is just a fantastic episode. Also, at the end, he's kind of knocked down a few pegs when the kid jumps in front of the bullet for him.
Mm.
that's the first time that we really kind of see him take regret for any of his actions, and it almost humanizes him a little bit, in my opinion. Now that sympathy, that empathy doesn't actually last very long, because the next episode he's back to his normal self. But it almost shows me that there is a human being in there underneath all that stupid.
See, and that it doesn't count for me because it didn't change him. If it had changed him, great. Then maybe I could feel something towards him. I could begin to think he's a redeemable person. But he only felt guilt when there were people around judging him or him perceiving that they were judging him, and as soon as they were gone, he didn't give them another thought at all. And this kid died for him, and it didn't change him. It didn't change his personality. It didn't change the way he thinks about things. And so he is just getting more and more irredeemable to me.
I still
I
like him.
I can completely see not liking him because of his foibles. I have a lot of respect when you have a character who provokes such a strong reaction. And for the most part, it's the way they write someone like Kaylee, or even Simon or Shepherd Book. But for Jane to be, so much, he's in the show but doesn't really do a huge amount. He's quite often useful just as a tank. But he is, he provokes a reaction. He's either very funny and sort of lovable from that, or he annoys you because of the way he treats people. Uh, but,
Yeah, so to be clear, I'm not saying that I wish he weren't in the show
mm,
because he does provide something I think that the show needs, but that doesn't mean I have to like him. It would be a very different show if he weren't in it. And and I like the show as it is. I just don't like Jane, and he makes me angry, and I'm going to continue to talk about that, but that doesn't mean I think the show would be a better story without him.
mm. Joss Whedon, when they were starting the series, he told all the actors, no one is safe. Everyone is expendable. This is not the Captain Mel show. This is not the, River figures out what's going on in her head show. This is Firefly, and everyone can go. Um,
Huh.
and oh, who plays Jane?
Adam
Baldwin.
Baldwin.
Adam Baldwin. Thank you. Not a Newman. It's a Baldwin. He said that he wanted to make his character as lovable and memorable as he could from the beginning, so he had a better chance of surviving. And you can see that he
How'd
does.
that
He
work
does
out
stand
for him?
out.
I think it worked out pretty well, because he is lovable in the Mandy hates him kind of way.
But you put him.
He has moments that make me smile or laugh,
I call him
but
Vera.
there oh no. There was no smiling or laughing in that whole scene.
She's got a name.
Generally scenes where he's experiencing pain make me laugh. Like ripping the tape off after in Ariel after he strapped the
That
gun down
was
and Mal makes him take it
funny.
off. His facial expression there is amazing. So when he's in pain, I enjoy those. I think I'm a terrible human being too, but we're gonna whistle right past that, okay?
But compare him to Wash. Wash has got some good lines and some quippiness, but my viewpoint is that I don't think Wash has added a huge amount to it. There's certainly nothing that someone else couldn't have done. Jane, I think, is a more memorable character. And he's more fully formed. The line in Ariel where he talks about, if I'd wanted schooling, would have gone to school. Absolutely
Right.
that. He is very stupid, and he commits to the bit perfectly. He is always,
Yes. Yes.
just a bit dumb and not quite up on things, and just going with, the oversized bit of his brain that forces him to go and act with aggression most of the time.
Right. Okay. So, highlights from Janestown for me
Mm.
have nothing to do with Jane. The rapport between River and Book was absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole episode was worth it just to see those two together. It was great. I loved it. I laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
they definitely had some fantastic scenes in this episode, and my favorite one of those scenes is when Books stumbles on River messing with the Bible, and she says that it's broken and needs to be fixed, which, believe what you want to believe, but it kind of really depicts both sides of the God's real, God's not real debate really well.
Mm.
So, for example, River was trying to explain Noah's Ark by using quantum physics, and Book was trying to explain to her that faith isn't something that needs to be fixed. And it was really, it had nothing to do with anything else that was going on in the episode, but it built both of those characters up. It explained both sides of that religious argument well, and it was clever in the way that it was presented.
Yeah, even just within the episode, and he does that perfect bit where he talks about, you don't fix faith, it fixes you. It's about having belief rather than sense or logic to something. And she comes back to him later on. She says, "I tore these out of your symbol, and they turned into paper." So
That
you can
is
see
the
it's
best
it's
line.
yeah, it's resonated with her. Whether like you say, it doesn't matter what she believes or what she's taking out of this. She's sort of getting some comprehension of what he's talking about. It's lovely, and the hair.
The hair.
It's damaging his brain.
But so has he had his hair like that for 6, 7 episodes at this point, and that's where they allow him to show it. That's subtle build-up.
I loved it. I really did. Humor is used kind of sparingly, although I mean it's really not, but when they're actively trying to be funny, they just
Mm.
do it so well. So very well. And
Yeah, it's mostly very smart dialogue. There's very few
it
times
is.
where it's, a visual set piece or something.
And when River's involved in the humor, I just love it that much more. I
Yeah.
do. I don't understand why, but her scenes with humor just are the best.
Mm. Again, I think I talked about her, doing this very expressive thing because she doesn't have many lines. She needs to portray a lot physically. And when you see her scream and run away from him, she absolutely explodes. And then at other times, like you said, she's completely deadpan. There's nothing betrayed, and it's all in what she's saying and how she's delivering it.
Right.
Fabulous.
Right. I think my favorite part was was where Zoe told River that she could come out now because he put his hair away, and River says something like, "It doesn't matter, it's still there."
It'd still be there, waiting.
Waiting, that's what it was. And I was like, that's just amazing. Because, I mean, it really did look like a monster. It did! So let's move on to Out of Gas.
That's
And you guys didn't really respond much to me in the doc, so you're going to have to figure out what you're going to say. Because this is not just going to be the Mandy Show talking about this episode, especially since you guys like this episode so much.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite of all the episodes. That is probably still to come. But yeah, it's so well done because you finally get to that moment of, oh, we can see where everyone came on board. Oh, that's an interesting story. That's an interesting story. Wait, why did they hire Wash? Oh, Kaylee's not the original engineer. Oh, all the way through, there's these revelations that make you think and make you sort of, surprised at the story that you might have expected to see.
Yeah,
But
that bit
you get
about
something different.
Kaylee was brilliant because up
Mm.
until this episode, I just assumed that she had been part of the crew from the beginning, and then you realize how she was brought on, and it's so out of character for her from what we know of her so far, and it's just hilarious.
Yeah, you have an expectation of her as, a sweet, innocent, young girl. But she is not. She looks engines when she's on her back because that gets her hot. But brilliant. The positive sexuality she portrays is one of the great things of it. She doesn't hide things. She's open about it, not in a very crude way, not in a Jane sort of way, but she owns it. It's part of her character. It's fine.
And there's also the fact that Zoe didn't like Wash when they first hired him, and
Mm.
now they're married, and that was a great little extra from this episode.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it was the kind of, I mean, if you, she just said he bothers me so many times that it was kind of clear that she liked him. He didn't really
Mm,
bother her. You know, it's one of those
mm,
things. She protested just a little bit too much.
I
That's what
don't know.
I
He
got out. That's
bothered
how I read it. I mean, that thing on his lip bothered me.
that very beginning Wash. I didn't like him at all. I like the Wash that we know and love now, but that guy was obnoxious, and he bothered me too.
They're all obnoxious when they're younger, I think.
Yeah, but Wash is.
The,
Wash
the
is
thing
Wash.
that stands out for me in that scene is Zoe, like you say, keeps saying he bothers me. And perhaps we could read into that thing of, oh, I like this guy, and maybe there's going to be a story of, but I like the captain at that time, so I didn't want to be distracted from that or something. Who knows? But we've talked about she's his right hand man. She's been his right hand man since the war. He's there. She's there because he trusts her, because she's a confidant, an advisor, whatever role she fits in the five-man band. And she's telling him he bothers her, and he's still saying, but he's got recommendations, so I'm hiring him. There's a disconnect between what's being said and what they actually do. Dissonance.
I hadn't thought about it that way. That's true.
Mm.
Mm.
I like it from the perspective of, oh yeah, it's interesting to see, their relationship didn't just start. And if I'd had to put a backstory to it, I would have said, oh, he was brought on because they were married or they met in the intervening years and then they were hired together. So, it's
See,
a nice twist to have him brought on and then them fall in love. But
That was kind of what I imagined before this episode was that they had been married before,
mm,
and that's why he was there. Because,
that's what I thought
like
too.
like we've discussed before, he doesn't really have anything like spectacular about him in the episodes up to this point. So I couldn't imagine them stumbling upon this guy and being like, "We need a pilot. This guy's amazing. Let's hire him."
Well, apparently
But
he can really fly a ship because, he flicks
apparently
three
so.
switches and then pushes the knob
yeah,
forward.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the opening scene just because there's a little bit that I'm going to be critical about because it kind of took me out of the story the second time I watched it. So the opening scene is of Mal. He's injured and he falls down onto the grating. And then you are hearing the voices talking, and then it transitions into Mal and Zoe, and he's opening the door to show the ship to Zoe, right? And so in the flashback, it's very bright and sunny, and there's light coming in from outside. In the timeline where Mal is injured and he falls to the floor, light appears on his face as if a door opened. And I really want to know where that light came from, or if it really is just a continuity error because they were trying to set up that next shot.
The magic of television. That's
I don't know. I've never
it.
noticed that.
I noticed it the second time I watched it, and it bothered me
Yeah, because
because
it's like he looks up like someone's coming in, but it's actually flicking around the flashback.
exactly.
Yeah.
He does. He looks up as if a door is opening and that's where the light is coming from. But at that point, he's alone in the ship. And for a moment, I wondered, well, is this from the end where they're coming in to save him? But it's not because he hasn't even fixed the ship yet at this point. This is before he gets up, makes his way through, and when he finally collapses at the end, he's in the pilot room, whatever you call that on the ship. I don't know.
Cockpit.
Sure. So it really bothered me. I am the crazy person who will nitpick about tiny details, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's just storytelling through visual medium
So
rather than
you
an
think it
actual
was it really
in-universe thing.
was it really was just because it was setting up the flashback shot.
Yeah, in the same way, oh, when they go to Jane, and it's everyone's holding guns on each other in the cargo, and you hear
Hmm.
the person say reason, and then it goes to the flashback, and everyone's holding guns on each other, and it's actually the person in the flashback saying reason. They're doing the same trick with the audio. It just doesn't stand out so much because you're used to that kind of flental.
I mean, yeah, they did that with every scene of the flashback. There was some sort of voiceover from the flashback scene right before the flashback. Like in the first one, in the opening scene right before they open that door, it's the salesman talking about how she's a great ship and she can be fixed up and all that stuff. And so that doesn't bother me. I don't know why the light does. I guess I can headcanon it that it was all in Mal's head. He was imagining that he was seeing this happen and that's why there was light on his face. I don't know. I nitpick. I'm sorry.
You're
How
picking things
dare
just so you
you?
don't have to like it. It's okay. We'll
But
take
I
it.
do like it. I do like. Look, if this is what I can find to complain about in this episode, I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. When something is very good, it's hard to talk about it in depth sometimes because there's just gushing there. There's just, oh, look how good it is.
Right. And I mean, we already talked about Summer's humor. She does that
Mm.
deadpan humor so well, even though I think that may have been her only line in the episode, now that
No,
I
no,
think
no.
about it. But it was,
She does it again later, where Book is worried. He's worried about running out of air. And she goes, you're worried we'll die gasping. We won't. That's not going to happen. We'll freeze to death first.
oh, you're right. Absolutely. I forgot about that
And
scene.
it's the same gag, but done just as well.
Yeah, she kind of gets the same gag over and over again, where she gets that last line that's
Mm.
just deadpan, serious from her perspective, but really funny.
Yeah.
I would like to think that if the show got more seasons, they would have eventually evolved that gag into something else and not just continued to do it. But right now, it's still really funny. So,
Yeah, stick with it.
I know I had mentioned before that the first time I watched this episode, it didn't really affect me because I was kind of watching it from that clinical analytical perspective. But the second time I watched it, it warmed my heart so much because this truly was a found family episode. This crew was a crew. They were family. With Simon's birthday, celebrating it, Zoe
Yeah.
pushing Kaylee out of the way when it was clear that there was an explosion coming.
Hmm.
Mal sacrificed himself so that everybody else could get off the ship safely. Everybody came back because they wanted to save Mal. It just, everything that I want to see in a crew, I got out of this episode. And I loved it. I loved it with my whole heart.
Yeah. Sitting
Yeah.
around the table, exchanging stories because sick people are hilarious.
Yeah, I won't say that anymore.
And that's the word that I use that I always forget it's from that scene until we get there. It's like, oh yeah, that's the thing I always say.
Yeah, I picked it up because you used it once, and I was like, "Oh, that's funny." And so I used it in some of my thoughts, and then I got to the scene, and I was like, "I'm never saying that again."
I'm inceptioning you like Jane.
No, not gonna happen. I promise you. Especially once we get to Ariel.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Ariel?
Um, yeah, we can skip right to Ariel if you want
Oh, was there
to.
anything else in there? Oh yeah, there was that one point, wasn't there? You not
There
liking the
was.
use of the word whinge.
I hate it. I hate that word.
Where
It
is
makes
this
me
word?
cringe. It is what
Does
British
whinge
people
make you
say
cringe?
instead of the word wine.
Okay.
No,
And they
as
said
well
it
as
in
the
the
word
show?
whinge.
Yes. Mal said it to Wash.
Yeah, in the argument scene.
Huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not a real word, you guys. I don't care if you British people use it. It's not a real word. Just say wine. And it makes absolutely no sense for an American writer to write this for a Canadian actor to say when they're in a universe that's half Chinese. No. It
It's
bothered
another
me.
Joss Whedon thing because he lived and studied in the UK for a number of years when he was very young. So I suspect that's how that crept in there. But no, whinge is used similarly to whine, but slightly different. You whinge because you are moaning about something. Your whining has a sort of non-detail specific to it. It's just, oh, I don't want to do the things. You're whinging because you're going on about it, but about why you don't want to do it.
No, that's whining too. Whining is just complaining about things.
So you're dropping U's from words, you're dropping G's from words, you're changing S's to Z's.
Wait, what?
We are
What's
right and
the
you are
Z?
wrong.
What's the Z? Is that the British?
It's a Z.
It's a Z, man.
Man, you can tell how American I am right now, I think.
No, a Z is what we call the last letter of the alphabet.
You mean the Z?
Yes.
No, I
The
mean
Z.
Z.
He means Z.
No, it's
Yes, he means Z. So, yeah, that's just, I nitpick and I have to nitpick because Mal said whinge and I hate it because apparently I hate the way British people speak. Even though I really love
Right, I'm
British
hanging up. Done.
accents.
End of the episode. Thanks everyone for coming along.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry,
I'll go
Matthew.
back to my U's
She's
and my
not
S's.
sorry.
So now that I've made you guys all hate me, let me just tell you this episode just makes me hate people. Because people are horrible. I don't understand how this other ship came and did what they did. I don't understand how people can be like that, although, I mean, I live in the United States right now, so I kind of do understand, but I don't understand.
Yeah, they're pretty awful. And there is the thing that they are flying where they're flying to avoid alliance, so it's a sort of potentially more criminal area. So the people they run into are criminals.
Which is why I hate people. That's just me. I hate people. So
But the people on the crew are good.
the people on the crew are good, and the way the episode ended was just amazing because Mal said, "Y'all are gonna be here when I wake up, right?" And it just made me happy.
Yeah, and
We went through the
Aww.
bad stuff, and then we got to the good stuff, and it was wonderful and heartwarming, and I like it.
yeah, Shepherd Book puts him at ease because he's now the heart of the show.
Yes, it was
Hmm.
great. So you wanted to move on to Ariel, so let's talk
So
about
now we're
Ariel.
all such a lovely, happy family. Let's see how they get on in the next episode.
I hate you.
It's not me you hate. Let's just put that. Yeah,
I hate Jane, you guys! In case you weren't clear about that. I
I
hate
think these are
Jane.
actually your hidden feelings for Jane. I think
she's
that you
protesting a
talk
lot. Is that what you're
so
saying? Yeah.
much about hating him that you're just trying to hide the fact that you love him.
Okay, let's go with that.
You'd kiss him if he was knocked out by some floozy.
No. I have to be honest, I was actually disappointed that Mal didn't kill him.
I wasn't. Of course, we've
Imagine
established that
that.
I love Jane.
It's weird though that I feel this way because I understand why he didn't do it. You know, Mal can't do that. He's the hero of the show. You know, he is in charge. He's the leader. This is his crew.
Uh,
You
He's the
know,
hero of the show, but I think he could do it if he really wanted to.
Yeah, he kills people.
I
He
think
hits
I
women.
think the show could get away with it.
he kills people and he hits women, but he doesn't do that to people in his crew.
Mm,
And the whole reason that he is so upset with Jane is because Jane betrayed the crew. And so couldn't turn around and do the same thing. He can't do an eye for an eye here. It wouldn't work. And so I understand why he didn't do it, but I really wish he had. I think if he had done it, it would have disappointed me just as much though, if not more, because it would have damaged my perspective of him.
mm.
But Jane deserved it. Jane deserved it so much. And I do have to say I am curious about where Jane's character goes from here. You know, Janestown did not change him. It is possible that this could because he cared enough about the people on the boat that he didn't want them to know what he did. He
Yeah,
was okay with dying, but he didn't want them to know why. And I think that could be a turning point for him, but I don't know that it will because he is just so deeply a douchebag. But I am interested to see what happens in the next couple of episodes with his character.
yeah. He shows genuine sorrow for what he did, I think, or at least sorrow for what it will make everyone think of him. And he doesn't want to be thought that way. You know, he liked being thought of as the hero in Janestown. And I think he quite likes that the Doctor slaps him on the back and says they wouldn't be there without him.
I was having a bit of a hard time with part of that. Initially, I had thought that once Jane understood what they had done to River, that he changed his mind. I thought that he was going to try and get them out before they got caught. That's how I read it. And so I was really surprised when that's not what happened.
Well,
You
like you've
know?
said before, Jane's out for himself or whoever will pay him, and
Hmm.
he was imagining getting a huge payout from this at the time.
Yeah, I don't know if I hoped if it was wishful thinking or if I just like seeing the good in everybody, even Jane when applicable. And clearly it wasn't here. I think I hoped. But it really did seem like he was genuinely horrified by what they did to her by cutting into her brain. And so I was thinking, I had hopes that he was going to get them out. But then after I rewatched it the second time, I realized that that was never the case because when Mal confronted him, it was because he took them out the back instead of the way he was supposed to take them out. And so, of course, he didn't ever actually change his mind. He just
Mm.
wanted the money. I think he was just trying to get it over with faster so that he could feel his guilt now and then he would have his money and be happy.
And not have a second thought like the kid on Jamestown.
Right.
Mm. And he says, the money was too good. I got stupid. Yeah, he goes with his first instinct. He doesn't have any second thoughts about things. I love the escalation of Mal with him, where he in the opening bit where he's been knifed, and the doctor is sewing him up, and Mal calls him out, where he says, if you don't get off this boat, I swear. And he says, you swear what? What do you swear? And he says, this is my crew, and they're part of it, and you're just gonna have to live with that.
Yeah.
And so that's obviously not gone through to him and worked. So at the end of it, he does something even more extreme to scare the living what's it out of him. And the turn at the end of that first scene, where Jane stalks out, but then Mal does have a go at the doctor, and he says, you need to keep her confined, you need to keep taking care of her and making sure she doesn't hurt anyone, otherwise she will be left. He does the right thing on both sides, keeping control of it so that he's not being told what to do, but then he does also do the right thing in making sure that Simon is taking care of River.
Mal is an exceptional leader.
He really
I mean,
is.
and I mean, that's been true since the beginning. I mean, you've seen that in the way that he's taking care of people all the way in the episodes I didn't even like. And I can really appreciate that about him. I like it. I also really, really liked Simon in that opening scene because he is stitching up Jane's chest and
Yeah,
he is not intentionally trying to hurt him while Jane is spewing all of this crap about his sister. He is still doing his job the way that he's supposed to do it. And
Well,
I was
to
impressed by that.
to be fair, Jane kind of had a right to be pissed off at that point because he was minding his own business when River came and sliced his chest open. So I think that's part of why Simon is being as cool about it as he is because he's kind of feeling a little guilty that his sister did this.
mm.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like yes, she cut him with a knife, but it was not a bad cut. It just needed a couple of stitches. It's not like she cut him down to the bone
Oh,
or
that's
She
sort
cut
of
him
anything. It
from like
wasn't
armpit to
fatal.
armpit almost.
It
because he
was
looks better in
long,
red.
but I mean, I feel like his reaction was just over the top. Essentially, this girl, this young girl who is clearly sick, did something to him that was uncalled for, shouldn't have happened, whatever. But his first instinct is to turn her over to the people who want to kill her. His reaction was inappropriate and over the top. And I understand that's Jane. That's his character. But for Simon to stay cool and calm while Jane is reacting that way,
Mm.
I appreciated that. I
Yeah,
was impressed by it.
I can
And
see that.
I don't think I could have done that had I been in that position.
Yeah, I can completely see that. Jane's made a leap to, well, if we're going to kick them off anyway, let's make some money from it. But Simon knows that he's not the one who makes decisions anyway. So
Right.
mm. I really love the sort of nuance of the writing that it's River having a slight episode and attacking Jane that causes them to go to the hospital and have this heist to help River that Jane almost sells them out on and ends up getting them out of it. It is very much the two of them are kind of both inciting incidents for every step of the episode.
That is true.
Mm.
I think it's really, really weird that they killed everybody who spoke to River. I don't understand that. It intrigues me more about River's character and what they did to her that we still don't know about. Because obviously she's important to them because they want her alive. But there's something about her that's so important and so secretive that just for talking to her and not even having an actual conversation, for her spewing gibberish to
Yeah,
people
talking
who
about
don't
Christmas.
understand what she's talking about was enough for them to be killed in a horrifyingly violent way. And so I am very interested in what we're going to find out about River in upcoming episodes.
Yeah, there's been a nice arc with her, and this is the end of that sort of second stage of it. Her us beginning to understand that she's got all the smarts that Simon talked about, making him look like a child for how intelligent, how capable she is at dance, at drawing, at math, at understanding everything. Into a bit of, oh, there's some sort of psychic predictive thing going on here and being able to see the future slightly. And now into, but she's a bit manic from it, and we finally find out, they've stripped her amygdala to do whatever they've done to her.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing River in the next episode too, after Simon gives her medicine. I want to see how his treatments, now that he understands kind of physically at least what the damage is in her head, if his treatments have any effect and what becomes of her.
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to that.
It would be exciting to see. Hashtag no comment.
Yeah. The last thing that I really liked about Ariel was Simon's little pet name for River, which I think we've heard before, but I didn't really notice it until this episode when he calls her Maymay.
Maybe.
And I looked that up, and it literally means little sister. But I think it's so sweet and so cute, and I just really liked it. I mean, you guys are probably picking up that I really like that sweet stuff.
No, not you.
Not even a little bit.
The Chinese is starting to creep in even more. Every time we look up one of these scenes that we're commenting on, there's usually something in there.
Oh, there was so much more Chinese in these episodes, enough that I wished we had had subtitles. But I know that we couldn't because they were all really bad words and insults in most of the cases. But I mean, there were full out like sentences and phrases in these episodes that we didn't get earlier. And
Well, they're floating around the interwebs if you
I'm
want to
sure
go
they
check
are.
them out. But yeah, it would have been nice to have the subtitles, but at the same time, I think it might have taken something away
Mm.
from it. And I can't quite put my finger on what, but it might have taken something away if we knew exactly what they were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it feel much more futuristic and separate from now. Having stuff you don't quite understand or that you have to kind of comprehend yourself.
Right.
I like when James starts betraying them and he goes to the video screen to call the officer, and the officer even greets him with a ni hao. The sort of
Right.
Chinese hello greeting. It's so casual. It's even, replaced a basic word like hello. Lovely. So we've talked a bit about Kaylee, and we've talked about Mal, Saffron, and the ship, and Wash, and pretty much everyone. We've not touched on Inara too much, because for the most part, she's been companioning, if we can use it as a verb.
I think it's a perfectly acceptable verb.
It's better than some of the other words we could use.
Yes.
There was a thing that this is the best place to talk about it, and this is a bit niche behind the scenes. I mentioned earlier how no one was safe. Everyone had been told they were expendable from this show, like any of the crew of the Nostromo and Alien. And one of the sort of repeated things that's done a bit subtly, is Inara and Death. Sarah, we haven't talked about this previously, but have you read some of the stuff about Inara and Death?
No.
Okay, this is going to be me waffling a little bit, so we might have to look stuff up as we go. But Inara in Serenity, when they are going past the Reavers and everyone's holding their breath and trying to keep quiet, she is staring at a syringe.
I do remember seeing that, yeah.
hmm And then in Out of Gas, there's a bit where the doctor, she and the doctor were talking about the ship, and she says, I love this ship. I have from the first moment I saw it. Simon, I just don't want to die on it. Inara, I don't want to die at all.
I do remember that. And
Mm.
I remember thinking it was weird. And I was wondering if she had some sort of like quest for immortality. But that quickly got overshadowed by the rest of the episode.
It's the way it's delivered and the way you could take it. It reminds me of the end of Star Trek Generations. Commander Riker says, I plan to live forever. It's that kind of throwaway, hey, I'm young and I'm cool and I'm hip and I've got my beard, so I'm going to be great. That was Riker, not Inara.
Right,
So
right.
it could be taken that way. The behind the scenes that got revealed in like 2011 or 2012, years later. There's two backstories or possible stories for Inara. The main one being she is dying from an incurable disease.
Okay.
So she found this out while she was going through her companion training, and she has decided to just go and see the world, see the universe. And this is why she's taken up on a ship that she knows is going to go everywhere. She's not too worried about the moral of what they're doing, but she's got this thing of, she's found out she's dying and only has a certain amount of time. Now,
Is this fan theory or is this coming from Joss?
this came from the actress, Marina Baccarin.
Okay, so this could just be her headcanon.
I think this is what she was told.
Okay.
I haven't got it in front of me, but as I understand it, at a convention, she was asked about some of this, and she did say, yeah, the backstory for her was that this was going to be the reveal, possibly with a, she finally finds happiness, and then in the way of all Joss Whedon shows, if anyone gets happy, you know what comes next.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They lose their soul or they die. So that's one thing, and it does stand out. And I'm bringing it up now because I've always read this after I've rewatched the show. You binge watch it, it's 14 episodes, you get it done, and then I go away and I'm going to read and look up stuff that I thought about during. So I never look out for any more of this. So I'm just going to keep an eye on were there any more signs or hints of it. The other thing that the syringe could also build toward was one of the stories they talked about doing was Inara injects herself before going to see any client or any job that she takes on, so that if she's attacked, if she's raped, if anything happens, if they don't pay, she does not give them the antidote to the poison she's injected herself with that they have taken on during the course of their visit. And the story was going to be that at some point, wherever she is companioning, she is attacked by Reavers, and when Mal finally rescues her, she is alive and all the Reavers are dead.
I
Every
have
single one
heard
of them.
something like that,
Mm.
but I haven't heard it in that much detail.
Which could have been, you see that as almost a sort of series-long arc of her coming back from that and how you rehabilitate or something. Would have been interesting, but my God, that's dark. That's so very, very
Yeah.
dark. But I am going to try and keep an eye out for are there any other lines or anything like that that stands out to me. And I
Yeah.
wanted to mention
Yeah.
it so you could too.
Now I'm definitely going to as well.
I also did a bit of reading on the amygdala because I'd never really looked into it. What did they actually do to River? Is this something that's well known? Is this a procedure we know about? What does it explain? The amygdala is part of the brain that deals with memory and emotion, or the association of emotion with memory.
Well, Simon mentions in the episode that when they stripped her amygdala, that's the part of the brain that deals with fear.
Very much so.
And
And
so,
just other emotions. I think he
yeah,
said she feels everything because she can't not feel it now.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's slightly different than that from what I've read. There was an experiment that I read about where they had damaged or done surgery on the amygdala of rats, which has been done, whatever your feelings are on that, obviously. There was then an associated picture of a rat running over a cat. It just had, not that it wasn't afraid, it just had no comprehension of this could be a thing that's dangerous, I'll just go and do it. So it's not even pushing down an emotion like Simon was saying, but it's actually about resolving the way you work within the world and how you deal with things and how you think, no, I shouldn't do that because it's scary or it's dangerous or something. So when you apply that and think about when they hold her hostage and she starts going off on Christmas, she doesn't comprehend to be afraid or there's a problem or something's popped into her head and she just starts spouting it off.
So it's almost like she has no self-preservation left
Mm,
because she can't associate, you know, fear or even danger with negative things that would happen to her.
yeah, there's no filter there whatsoever. And I think there's more than that than what they've done to her. Obviously she's got these sort of possible latent psychic abilities. She's still as intelligent, but she comes across in a slightly childlike way. So there's more to it than this. One of the interesting things I read about the amygdala, of which there are two, because we're bilateral, is that it corresponds positively to aggression and to no, not positively to gender, but it is larger in men. So the more aggressive you are, and the more, in inverted commas, masculine you are, the larger your amygdala will be. And all this is being told to the biggest masculine aggressive person on the ship. Again, I quite like the symmetry of that. Probably not intentional, but there it is.
It could very much be intentional, though. You never know
It could be they've probably done reading,
with
haven't they? And yeah.
I mean, subtlety is Joss's forte.
Mm.
Um, I can't remember. I don't think he wrote Ariel, but I know, I mean, he's very hands-on. So even if he's not credited for it, he could have done line rewrites and, all complete scene rewrites. And he wouldn't be credited for it. So it's entirely possible
Yeah. And
that that's some of that Joss subtlety showing up.
this is the sort of story beat they would have planned out at some point. What did they do to her? Oh, well, they did this. They attacked her amygdala and stripped it because it causes this, and that's the sort of thing we want from her.
Right.
And then understanding that goes, oh, let's, oh, hey, it corresponds positively to aggression. Let's put it into Jane. But yeah, quite interesting to think that that's the thing that's affected her, and whether the Doctor will be able to restore some of that or work on that in some way. The writer of the episode was Jose Molina, who also worked on Dark Angel and has done some Star Wars stuff. He's done some Agent Carter, various things.
Okay.
So, when we recorded episode 1, we talked about a number of different questions, things we said we should revisit because they would make more sense as we went on. So I'm going to just run through them and we'll see if there's anything we want to take out. Mandy, one of the big things we discussed was the world. It didn't quite make sense to you, the old Western, the Chinese, the science fiction futuristic stuff. Does it make any more sense yet?
Absolutely not. I just accept it for what it is.
You
That's
like it
pretty
now, so
much
it's
all you
okay.
can do at this point.
Yep. It is what it is.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes me out a little bit. The opening to Our Mrs. Reynolds, which has the great moment of, I swear by my pretty floral bonnet, I married me a mighty ugly woman. But then they get into a gunfight, jumping around a swamp thing and hiding behind trees and all this. They've got a spaceship. Surely they've got
Yeah,
something better than horses and a cart to deal with this lot with.
honestly, what bothered me about the opening of Our Mrs. Reynolds is the elder of the community seemed to be very much Amish,
Hmm.
and that's just a whole nother culture that we haven't seen yet that doesn't really make sense in this world. But you know
Well,
what? It is what it is.
again,
That's
they're
just,
flying around to all these different planets, so each planet's going to have its own culture.
I suppose.
Yeah, do you think in planning they just made a list of, let's go to the heavily Catholic, let's go to the Amish one, let's go to the highly modern medical one, sort of Grey's Anatomy in space.
That they probably did.
I would watch Grey's Anatomy in space, FYI.
Hey, new show idea.
Yeah. Dear Shonda,
Somebody
could you
call
kill all the
Shonda
people?
Rhimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've touched on River a little bit and talked about some of her developments. It sounds like she's not quite where you want her to be or you expected her to be.
No. But I'm trying to, I mean, like I said, I'm trying to reframe my perspective and get rid of the preconceived notions that I have and accept her for who they're telling me she is. It's difficult to do, by the way,
Yeah.
but I'm trying. I mean, and I like her more than I did before. Her humor has a lot to do with that because she becomes more relatable to
Mm,
me. And after Ariel, I'm really interested in what's coming next for her. But it's not at all what I expected.
okay. We also said we'd talk about Jane again. I think we've talked about Jane once or twice. Are you comfortable? We said everything we're going to say about him.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I think y'all know very well how I feel about Jane.
And we did say we'd mention the Reavers to see if they become any more tangible or defined, but I don't think they've been in any of these episodes.
Yeah, they didn't come up at all in any of these episodes, not even in passing. They weren't even mentioned.
Yeah.
Although I will say that I thought that in Out of Gas, even though we had just seen the human captain of the ship on the screen, for some reason, the way they shot it, where the ship came up very loomingly over Serenity,
Mm,
for a split second, I was like, oh my gosh, the Reavers found him. But that's not what happened. So we didn't see the Reavers at all.
no. And it wouldn't be out of the realm's possibility to pivot and make the Reavers slightly different from what they talked about them early on. If we talk about the Ferengi in Star Trek or something, it could fundamentally change.
That sounds like it might be spoilerish, Matthew.
No? What, in Star Trek?
No,
I'm spoiling the
saying
first
that
few
it's
episodes of Next
possible.
Gen.
No, but saying that it's possible they could change how the Reavers are. When I haven't seen them again, it makes me think that when they come up again, they're going to be different.
That was idle speculation, as I am wont to do.
Uh huh. I'm sure it was.
Well, you may or may not find out. Spoilers, you won't.
True
Or
enough.
maybe you will.
I don't know.
Um,
Maybe we don't even see the Reavers again. So
Mal and Inara's relationship. Has anything more happened to them? How are we feeling about that now? What are our thoughts?
I think that when you almost lose somebody, it makes you realize how much that person means to you. So in Our Mrs. Reynolds, when Inara thought Saffron had killed Mal, her first instinct was to run to him, and then as soon as she realized he wasn't dead, she just kissed him without thinking. Like there was no thought there. It was, she was so relieved that he was alive, and she has feelings for him. And so I think it's clear from her perspective that there are feelings, and of course from our perspective that she has feelings. So
Mm.
now we just have to wait to see if Mal ever figures it out, or if Mal ever figures out that he has feelings for her, because I don't think he even knows that yet.
In the light of thinking about Inara was being set up to have a very dark, troubling storyline as we went on. It does explain a little bit for me why they wouldn't just go with and she admits her feelings to him. If I have to
Yeah.
think about why is she not telling him, she's not telling him because attachments are going to be hard for her and even worse for whoever she gets attached to. So she's doing it as a kindness.
When you brought up that backstory that the actress said she had about the fatal disease and
Mm,
everything, that actually adds a lot to why she wouldn't go ahead and confess her feelings to Mal, at least in my opinion.
yeah, but it was right there. It
Yeah.
was the perfect opportunity to. And it's the typical sort of rom-com thing of, she really likes him, but she doesn't want to be with him, but she wants to be near him at the very least, and isn't sure she wants to see him with anyone else.
Right. I mean, it's standard. I mean, look at Friends. How long did it take Ross and Rachel to get together
Yeah,
and then stay together? And on Grey's Anatomy, how long did it take Meredith and Derek to get together? It's never gonna happen in the first season
no.
ever.
Were there any more war references? Does the war come into it anymore?
Um, I think the only time it got mentioned was in the flashback scene in Out of Gas when Mal was showing the shuttle to Inara
Hmm.
and they talked about which sides they were on. But I
And
think that's
Inara
it.
supported unification.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm surprised after she said that he would let her stay at all, honestly.
Mal
She's
seems to be
pretty and her
fairly
veil thing.
pragmatic though.
Yeah,
And he needs two things from her. One, he needs the money from her renting the shuttle, and two, he needs the respectability of having
yeah.
a companion on the ship. And so
Legitimization.
I think those two things are worth more to him than a difference in values, especially since he's criminal now.
Mm.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important in that scene that we see she is his equal. She comes on and looks
Yeah.
around, and then she tells him the conditions of it. Now, he doesn't stand by most of those conditions, to be fair, but she is prepared to stand up to him and tell him what's going to happen. And yeah, I would think that's the sort of thing he likes in a woman.
Well, clearly, I mean, that's the kind of woman he was trying to turn Saffron into.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Um.
that's how he thinks women should be, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. No, I think that you're right. That's the only war reference that we've had. And again, the whole setup that we get at the beginning of Serenity of seeing the Battle of Serenity Valley. It hasn't done anything yet. Anything. Certainly, the beginning of the train job does a better thing for the backstory to just tell us he was on the losing side and he's a bit unhappy about it.
I think actually seeing it in Serenity was helpful,
Mm.
especially that the last shot of the battle is when they superimpose Mal's face over the ships coming in because
Mm.
they've essentially surrendered and they have to stay, and he's just so devastated.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that is important for his character to understand how much it meant to him and why not being part of the alliance is such a big deal to him. I think
Yeah.
without that shot, he's just a rogue.
Yeah. Not necessarily for the show, but it gives us a lot of good characterization. Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely
Right,
right.
right.
Did any of the words we mentioned crop up? Things like shiny and goram?
I heard shiny all over the place this time. I didn't hear Goriam as much. I know it was in there some, but I wasn't looking for it. I was actually kind of actively looking for shiny. And I just loved how it was just randomly here and randomly there.
Hmm.
It was great.
What's funny is on Twitter, I noticed somebody had tweeted with the word Goram, and I tagged Mandy in a retweet, and I was like, see, people do use it.
Well done, perfect. I like
Yep.
when the fake engineer, Bester, uses shiny. He says, "Oh, no one's ever called me a genius before. Shiny." And
Yeah.
there's a moment of, wait, is he going to become Kaylee? Is that the story here? Is that the...
I never experienced that moment, but
I didn't have
okay.
that moment either. I think you're alone in that, Matthew.
Okay. But because, again, like you said, oh, there's a different engineer. What's going on? And the fact that he then uses some of the same language as her, really nice. Just me. I was a little mean last week when I asked you to explain and dig into the idea of the found family because I knew what was coming, that Jane was going to kind of start ripping it asunder a bit. What do you think about the way it changed over these episodes?
I don't think it has, especially if you're looking at it from Mal's perspective.
Hmm.
I mean, Jane was never going to be loyal. That just, and we've seen that that seed has been sown throughout. I mean, he had already been approached previously with money to try and betray Mal.
Yeah,
And he didn't do it then. I guess the money wasn't good enough, And so it was always going to happen. But from Mal's perspective, we talked about this. He doesn't kill him. He shows him mercy because Jane is part of his crew. Jane is part of his family. He's not going to trust him anymore. But he still showed him mercy. From Mal's perspective, this crew is still a singular unit.
I'm not entirely convinced that Mal has ever trusted Jane. I think he keeps him around because he's useful. He's the big brawny guy, and maybe for comedic relief as well. But I think that in some part of Mal's brain, he's always expected Jane to switch sides when it suited him best. And I think that's kind of another reason why Mal didn't go ahead and throw him out the airlock. I think that it's just something that, yes, you're part of my crew. Yes, you are important to us, but we kind of saw this coming. Just don't do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I can see that too, especially when you think of the scene in Our Mrs. Reynolds where Jane brings Vera out. Mal's reaction is one of unsurprised, thinking that Jane is coming to fight him.
yeah,
And, he basically says, well, it was going to happen eventually. And then of course that's not what happens. But I think Mal would be stupid not to always expect something from Jane, especially when you consider how he recruited him.
yeah. The which one tracked us? The ugly one. But, and then he and Zoe bluff him into joining them.
Right. And it
Lovely.
was just because the money was better.
Yeah.
So,
Again, solid characterization. We know his principles. We know what he goes for, and let's run with it from there.
yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, they're still a family. I don't, Jane is the black sheep of the family, the one that you don't let handle the checkbook, you know?
Yeah.
But he's still there. He's still, I mean, Mal could have kicked him off the ship instead of killing him, and he didn't do that either. He lets him stay.
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot about Mal.
Hmm.
I also think Mal thinks that Jane has learned his lesson, at least when it comes to betraying Mal himself.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I'm looking
Hmm.
forward to watching the next ones because I really want to know. And the worst part for me is knowing that there's only 5 more episodes to go, and then it got canceled. So there's a whole heck of a lot of story that never gets resolved, and this could be one of them, and I just don't know. And it's kind of killing me here. So
Um,
yeah.
I just want to explain something that you mentioned just there for possibly younger listeners. A checkbook is something where you might. No. God, there's a reference.
Oh God, am I showing my age? Am I old?
Side note, I took my kid to New York City a few years ago, and she had never seen a payphone before.
Whoa.
And so we had to take her picture with the payphone. And I was like, oh my God, what world am I living in?
Oh, I'm so old. Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about with these 4 episodes? Have we covered everything? Is there anything really burning that you guys wanted to talk about that we didn't mention? I mean, we've been going for a while here, so I feel like we've kind of covered everything, but there
Yeah,
might be
I
something.
I think we've pretty much hit all the big things on the head. I'm still having a really hard time not spoiling it because I'm so excited about the entire series. So I'm trying not to say a lot of things, but I think we've done a really good job of covering the big things.
Well, next week you can spoil all you want to.
I am so excited. It's going
Yeah.
to be the best.
Next week, we're really going to dive into some of this stuff, so it'll be
It's going to be a
quite an interesting
5-hour long
conversation.
podcast.
It may very well be very long.
It's 3 parts on 5 episodes.
Right.
I think you're right. We've covered over everything we want to speak about in these episodes. So just looking ahead, from 2 perspectives, we talked about Joss Whedon's subtlety in setting things up. Is there anything you think has been set up that's coming? And from what you've seen, what are you most looking forward to, hoping to get a bit more information on?
It's hard for me to speculate on what might be coming that Joss has set up because Joss likes to set things up so far in advance. And so I'm mostly assuming that anything that he started would not come to fruition over the next 5 episodes. It would have been planned for later, like in Buffy when he started foreshadowing Dawn in season 3,
Mm,
when she wasn't going to come until season 5. You
yeah.
know, things like that. And so I don't have anything I can speculate about.
Okay.
But I can tell you what I hope we see. I hope that Jane changes
Bakes everyone a
and
cake.
grows more as a person. I hope that we learn more about River and why they want her so badly, what they want her for. Why did they do what they did to her? What were they going to do with her? I want to know, can Simon help her become less crazy? And I want to know more about Shepherd Book because why does the preacher know all of this criminal stuff? And why does he have an ID badge that gets him into a medical facility without question? Those are all things that I still have going on in my head that I really, really hope that at least some of it we get to see more of.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Let's hope.
Hashtag no comment, right?
Hashtag
No
no
comment.
Okay. Well, we will be back next week with another episode of Pop Culturally Deprived where we will talk about the last 5 episodes of Firefly. Until then, please remember to rate and review us on iTunes. If you want to get in touch, you can follow me on Twitter at Mandy K. You can email me at mandyk@popculturallydeprived.com, or you can comment on this post on popculturallydeprived.com. You can also find Sarah on Twitter at skepticallysarah,
Again, that's Sarah with no H.
and Matthew is at Matthew Vos. Until next time, I'm Mandy K.
And I use swear words like anybody else. I swear when it's appropriate.
But that's the whole point, Matthew. It ain't supposed to be appropriate.